Hello there, how are you guys doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel where today, as promised, we are taking a bit of a break from Metroid videos and Metroid discussions and conversations and theories and all of that stuff in the wake of Metroid Dread. I felt it was important to get back to a couple of other regular topics because there are other things to talk about. And today what I want to discuss is tangentially related to the recent news about the Nintendo Switch Online service, the expansion pack, and the N64 Genesis stuff, and that whole thing, which I have discussed in a couple of videos over the past few weeks as well. And I actually want to instead not so much focus on exactly the expansion pack, but I want to maybe discuss why I think Nintendo has decided to completely abandon the Virtual Console in favor of the expansion pack. Now, it's no surprise to any of us that the expansion pack and the Nintendo Switch Online service as a whole has been pretty divisive and definitely pretty controversial. There's a lot of folks who haven't been really happy with the service since day one, which does not include me. And now there is a whole new kind of group of people who are upset about the expansion pack and the pricing and what they're doing with the whole N64 game thing. And that technically does include me because I'm not the biggest fan of how they're handling that. And it kind of made me realize and go back and think about the whole Virtual Console structure, which was an amazing thing that Nintendo did. They introduced it on the Nintendo Wii back in 2006, 2007. As crazy as it is to think about at that time. Then they, of course, continued it on the Wii U, and I think it was even better on the Wii U. It was a great service, a great kind of menu navigation, all of the things there. And when the Switch came out, a lot of us were expecting for Nintendo to continue the Virtual Console, and I want to say that I remember Reggie sort of dropping hints that they were working on it before instead we learned about the Switch Online. But it never happened, and instead we did get Switch Online. We've gotten these kind of, rotating rentable services, NES, SNES, now they've added N64 and Genesis, and it's made a lot of us realize that maybe we missed the old Virtual Console structure more than what they're currently doing. Now, before we dive any deeper into the Switch Online and Virtual Console topic, I like to always remind you guys I'm always trying to grow the channel here on Rule of Two Review. I upload every single week, and I cover all things Nintendo, I cover all things Metroid, and I discuss all things gaming. So as you watch this video, if you seem to like what I'm doing and what you hear, then I hope you will consider subscribing to the channel. So I'm just going to get right to it and tell you guys why I think Nintendo has probably abandoned the Virtual Console in favor of their current online structure and their online pricing system that they're doing. And to me, I think it's that as much as we as fans might see the value of the Virtual Console and why we preferred it, I'm willing to bet that there is a lot less money to be made on individual purchases of downloadable games from a storefront than there is for making people pay a regular monthly or yearly subscription fee for whatever the service is, based on however much money it costs Nintendo or whatever company to maybe run that service. We live in a structure right now where everyone under the sun has some kind of regular monthly subscription service. It is crazy when you really stop and think about it. Whether it's video streaming content, whether it's game streaming content, whether it's Amazon and Amazon Prime stuff, whether it's food delivery services, everything. And I'm somebody who watches the show Shark Tank, for example, and I see so many people, random things like a toothpaste company or a sock company or an underwear company, whatever. And everyone in every kind of industry, and I see it a lot on the show Shark Tank, and I'm sure you guys have probably seen it if you've watched that show as well, everyone in every industry is trying to get regular payments from customers. It's no longer about selling you something one time and then just completing a transaction. Everyone wants every customer they have to pay them monthly, quarterly, or yearly for whatever product they're providing. And I definitely think it's weird. It's not a consumer service that I really enjoy. Like, I don't want to have to pay someone every month to have toothpaste delivered to me or whatever the case may be. And I don't even necessarily want to pay someone monthly just to play games that I don't actually own either. And so I just think that this is kind of the new way of business in a lot of ways. And when you bring this back to Nintendo and what we see them doing with the Virtual Console in the past and the Switch Online service right now, I think that that's what we're seeing. A storefront that allows one-time purchases can't possibly generate as much money as even a quarter of the Switch Online, of the Nintendo Switch install base paying yearly for the Switch Online service. I really feel that us as fans have to look at the Virtual Console a little bit differently and from a business perspective. Because I think as fans, if we don't think too heavy and deep about it, we probably think, oh, you've got this storefront with NES games and Super NES games and Genesis games and N64 games and TurboGrafx games and Game Boy Advance games. And so think of all the money that you must be raking in if you're Nintendo running a Virtual Console storefront. However, what we're probably not thinking about is how many of those games just sit there available unpurchased that no one cares about. When you go back to the Wii Virtual Console and you look at like some of those Genesis games and those TurboGrafx games, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's amazing that they were there and I love that they were there, but I would be willing to bet that a sizable amount of the games are made available for most of those consoles maybe no one purchased, or a very small number of people purchased. I mean, potentially as low as 10 to 50 people might have purchased some of those games on that storefront. And so what's the return on investment for Nintendo or the third parties who Nintendo licensed it through to make some of those obscure TurboGrafx or Genesis games available? I bet the return on investment is pretty low, if not in the negative. Yeah, Nintendo's making money hand over fist on all their first-party Mario games and Zelda games and Mario Kart games and stuff for all of these platforms. But the obscure off-the-wall stuff that all of us want from a Virtual Console, I bet no one's making any money on those games. However, if you take that same idea of the Virtual Console, you picture all of those games, the really popular Nintendo games and the really obscure TurboGrafx games or whatever the case may be, and instead of expecting people to be willing to shell out $5 to $15 for individual game purchases, you instead make everyone who might want to play them pay even a small fee, even if it's $10 or $15 a year, whatever the price may be, $5 to $10 a month, $20 to $50 a year, whatever your prices are. If you're getting regular money from people just to access them, that means every single person on the service is paying Nintendo money sometime throughout the year, whether it's monthly, quarterly, or annually. Nintendo is getting guaranteed dollars from every single one of the consumers, as opposed to the people who might choose to never go to the Virtual Console storefront and buy a game, or people who might never choose to buy all of those weird, obscure Genesis and TurboGrafx games that Nintendo paid to license and make available that people aren't buying. And so I am on the side of the Virtual Console here, and I'm on the side of, I think, the more consumer-friendly practice of something better than the Switch Online service and better than the expansion pack. I truly am on that side. And I myself have decided not to pay for the expansion pack, even though the Nintendo 64 is my favorite console. But from a business perspective, I think that this explains why Nintendo is doing what they're doing. And I hate to admit the truth of this. I don't want this to be the case, but it just seems crystal clear and obvious to me that there's more money to be had in, forcing people and consumers to pay regular subscription fees than it is to just hoping they buy one-off games for $5 to $10 a pop. It's kind of just the sad, harsh truth about where business and economics are going currently. And, as I mentioned near the beginning here with the whole Shark Tank comparison, the subscription model business plan is just the way of the future, I think, for a ton of industries. And obviously, movies and TV and video streaming, as well as gaming platform services, are really at the forefront and have been at the forefront of this concept for a very, very long time. Yes, we love the Virtual Console and just buying and owning digital versions of games for a one-time purchase. Steam has been offering that for like a decade or longer, or however long Steam has been doing it. A very, very long time. I think it's like 15 years or whatever. And so the gaming side has been on the forefront of digital kind of technology and transactions, but as the subscription service model becomes more prevalent and honestly probably more profitable for big, huge companies like a Nintendo or a Netflix or a Sony or an Amazon or whatever, obviously we're going to see companies push more to it. And so I don't want to give Nintendo an excuse or a pass for doing something less consumer friendly, but they're really only doing what any other company would do here. They're following the money, they're following the business trend, and it's sad because typically I think we've seen Nintendo kind of push back on some of those things for the sake of choosing to be more consumer friendly in the past, and that's one of the things I and many people have loved about them traditionally over the decades. But this is one where I think we're seeing their morality falter a little bit, and they're following the dollar in a way that to me doesn't feel the best. And it doesn't feel like they're looking out for the fans and the longtime Nintendo fans very much because, man, I've said this on my videos already. If the N64 games rolled out at $5 to $10 more annually than what they were already charging, that would have been a great price and I would have been paying it. But they more than doubled the price just to access these games. And they, kind of trapped people with the Animal Crossing thing. And like, if you're cool with it, then that's fine. I'm not here to get mad at anyone or tell anyone to feel the way I feel about it. But I'm just going to say it doesn't feel good to me. And I don't like the choices that they're making with this expansion pack and with their online service as a whole. I'm going to continue paying $20 a year for what the base model is, and that's fine. For as long as they allow me to do that, I should say. But the expansion pack, to me, kind of exposed what I think Nintendo's viewpoint is on the virtual console that they did in the past compared to the subscription service that they're doing now. And it's when I kind of realized, I don't know the hard numbers. Maybe the hard numbers would prove my theory wrong. But I feel pretty good about my theory that the virtual console is probably way less profitable for them than it is for them to kind of trap people into this subscription service monthly or yearly or whatever it is that you're paying for it. And so this is just the way of it, man. And the current Nintendo in the Switch era has a very different business initiative than the prior eras of Nintendo. For me, the golden era, when Reggie and Iwata and Miyamoto were running the company and they felt very gamer-focused and gamer-centric, and that was a great time and a time that we could celebrate as Nintendo fans. Obviously, that also created the Wii U, which I love, but was a system that wasn't successful. But every other piece of hardware and every other era within that time frame was incredibly successful. They had one thing that didn't do well. Out of everything else, the Wii and the the Wii and the DS and the 3DS and the Game Boy Advance stuff and all the virtual console things, they were doing great, successful things at the time. But in the Switch era, run by different people, they've got a different motive behind them. I still think they're making a great product. I love the Switch. I love the games that they're making. So they're still my favorite company. But this online thing, I think it's problematic with the addition of the expansion pack. It is now, to me, become a little bit problematic and unfortunate. And yeah, I miss the virtual console, man. I know why they're not doing it, because there's no way they were making as much money on all those games that nobody was buying. But I do miss those days. And so, at the end of the day, this is where we are. So this is what I think about the situation, why I think they're ignoring and abandoning the virtual console in favor of the subscription service. What do you guys think about my theory and my discussion here? Does it make sense to you, or do you see it a different way? Maybe you're super happy with the N64 stuff, which again is fine to me if you are, and I'm glad for you. Whatever you think, talk about it below. And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you next time on another video.